setup versus how the foreigners seen they structure. So I got another live to do after this, but I wanted to come on and touch on this first. Some of y'all seen me on here with idea from the goddess Glow Up, and we talked about the work that she do. This is similar to the function of the castle of the Califia Queens. The part they didn't tell us is 5 kings, or they call them the 5 bears, who are the chiefs responsible for being the guardians of the Califia castles. The main castle was a all-female resort where they went for healing, to solve life problems, and to use the sisterhood as a educational program by discussing with the other sisters who've already experienced it. Then these women is able to get back to balance, and then they go back home. And this was a big operation on the West Coast tribes historical record, but most of it is concealed in artwork throughout the land. So a lot of us don't see the artwork on the land. We only going by what is written in the history books. The 5 kings under, or the 5 Miku, chief elders, who was responsible for the warring factions to protect the queens, was all en route to Florida, and this is why they was able to go around South America with De Soto and the Califia Queens. So once they figured that out, and they knew that from Lewis and Clark how we was moving across the land, because Lewis and Clark left Philadelphia area, what we call the Northwest Territory or the Northeast Territory, the Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota, Ohio, and Indiana is the Northwest Territory. The settlers was never supposed to cross the Appalachians, but once they seen that the castles was empty, they rolled this into their grievance, or into their salvage logs, as the extended wreckage, using the protectorate agreement that the English bought from the French as the justification to survey the land. Yeah, look, they got a group of pale faces that's watching all this stuff we doing, and they are telling the other pale faces exactly what we talking about in the terms that they people understand. So we reaching a lot of people with the information, and it's not just me. Dane Calloway, a heavy hitter, top cat, and a lot of people want us to just only focus on the transatlantic slave trade and get frustrated because we can't do that, because before the transatlantic slave trade existed, we was over here tribed up. We were running our own systems. They came, they disrupted our systems, and they used conjure magic to try to conquer the land. I'm here to tell them it didn't work. So the 5 chiefs have title or Mesoamerican deity status, but into modern terms they just call them Afro chiefs, because they old Mississippians, and they come with the big old afros, and they all come with the weightlifting mentality, working with the steel. That's that big Tookie energy, right? If you go back to the main Pyru, right, His name is Puddin'. Pyru is the mirror. Okay, so that's two chiefs, one red, one blue, right? And they got to have a black and gold chief, which should be represented by what we call in modern terms the Latin faction or the Latin family. And we call them Latin Kings, MS-13, etc. But they all extended family members coming from southern Mexico down into San Salvador, bringing this all back to our consciousness. When they tribe up, they gonna be horrible until they recognized. And once the chiefs start remembering who they is, then their temperaments move out, because we was warring tribes used against each other, and we knew that the only remedy was to find I'm about to get back to Califia, was to find a cause for a treaty. So this is what the 5 kings under the Califias would have been doing in the process of tribing up, right? So when we see the Disney castle it burned down recently, but it was the replica. It was the replica of the castle that used to sit on Alcatraz Island that you hear about in Wonder Woman, right? If you go back to the story of Wonder Woman, the original Wonder Woman was a sister, and they replaced her with a pale face that they call Diana. And she was from Paradise Island. Funny, Paradise Island was the name that the native tongue spoke that referred to the island of the Califia Queens as Paradise Island, because they say any woman that comes there automatically comes back healed. And so they labeled it as Paradise Island. Some of the slang terminologies throughout the years, they called them Amazonians, because remember, the Amazon is in South America. Y'all got to remember this, because they overlaying names of significant places so that they could confuse the actual location. The Amazonians was a tribe of women from the Amazon River basin that feeds north into the Gulf of Mexico. And they was in close contact with the Califia Queens. This is how they split our forces, and it ended up falling into 2 war fronts against the Spanish conquistadors. We end up fighting in the Southwest against conquistadors, and we end up fighting in the Gullah Wars, Florida, in the against the conquistadors. You got to look at the Spanish overlay of the territories granted by the Vatican, because this is where they were sent to pillage gold from the people and to find a place to set up a country called Israel, because they kicked out of Europe. They didn't have nowhere to go, so they needed to find somewhere to be. Everybody native to the planet has a place on the planet where they belong. When you're not native to nowhere on the planet, you don't belong nowhere on the planet. But when you native to the planet is going to adjust your energy to wherever you at. And if you need to move, you're going to have an overwhelming desire to pack up and go somewhere else, because nature telling you you're on the wrong part of the land for who you are. So the Califia Queens is the lady that would run it would be equivalent of what the Hadia do for the goddess Glow Up. And then she had a lot of people that worked there to help out with the cooking, the cleaning, the teaching of different classes that they had there. Everything from what we consider home economics in school today to what we consider housekeeping and homemaking, or what we would call wifely duties and motherly duties, overcoming the domestic obstacles. one of the problems with a whole slew of women is they do not know that they are silently suffering from caregiver syndrome because they're so busy giving to everybody else that they already depleted, and they have no sister network set up to recharge, recover, and to see what they're doing right so they can do more of that, and see what they're doing wrong so they can do less of that. And the patriarchy don't want the women organizing and solving their own problems, so they offer them problem solvers in the form of DHS, in the form of family social services that doesn't do anything of significant value for the family's enrichment and betterment. So this is what the hostess of the Califia Queens function was. She was to make sure that every tribe on the land had access to the training and the education of the women for what we would consider guardian angel duties, big mama duties, overseer of a family that's extended. Because after a while, she began to learn how to utilize the members of the family in the field that they chose to get in order for it to benefit the family. But we forgot all about that when we start going to war with these people. We start putting our culture down, right? So when they blew the castle up, they had to create a replica of the Califia Castle, and they have to put it in the public forefront. So even if we forget that it happened, when we see the castle, we're going to wonder, where did the real castle go? Excuse me. We can look at the architecture of the replica and know that it's not the original. We can look at the texture of the visual impact, and it doesn't feel like the original. But all of the lighting replicated. All of the colors was replicated. The general outline of the design was all replicated. So they have to keep that to the forefront because they blew the castle up. Somebody know where the castle originally was. One of the chiefs gonna wake up from the slumber and say, wait a minute. The Califia Castle was where Alcatraz is. Why is it a prison there now? And then when you look across the land, you're gonna say, oh, they turned all our castles into prisons. It makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't they turn the land that was Califia's castle, which we consider the sacred ground, into a prison if they turned all of our castles into prisons or state buildings and mental institutions? They repurposed the indigenous architecture to tell y'all that we only lived in the teepee, which nothing can be further for the truth, because the teepee was not how we lived. That's how we travel. When we go great distances and we was riding on horseback or walking on foot, we pitched tents. We just called the tents we pitched teepees. And I'm not even sure that that's the original name we called them, or if that's something that the invaders came and called it and ascribed it to us, because a lot of the names of the tribes are not the names that they was before the invaders came, but they gave us exonyms to misidentify us and to use that for paper genocidal purposes. We got to remember, this has all been a war. It's been a war from the beginning of Columbus' arrival until now. The war evolved over time. If the war doesn't evolve, the people get annihilated, we all lose. So when it comes to the point where both sides are about to permanently lose, somebody had to have a sensibility to say, we need another way to fight this war. We wrapping this war up as we speak. This is what this is all about. This is the only reason why y'all be seeing me on social media, and I hate social media with a passion. I'm on here so that y'all can get the information that wake you up from the slumber and tell you that there's two groups of people in this war, and they look similar, but they different. They both got nappy hair and brown skin. But all skin folk ain't kinfolk. They look like us, but they ain't us. This part of the George Washington Challenge. And as part of the George Washington Challenge, it was a 200-year amnesia cycle, which is just a reenactment of a 2,000-year religious amnesia cycle, which is just a reenactment of a 4,000-year Exodus sleep cycle, which is just an extension of a 12,000-year to 15,000-year spell of Kingu. It takes us all the way back to what we call the Mount Sinai, the god Ninursin, or Nanursin, or Sin, and his Babylonian blood magic conjure system, because it's a system, it's not just one spell. The Babylonian sex magic system, it's not just one act, it's a whole bunch of sexual deviancies that goes into subjugating the energy field. Then you got the money magic. It's a whole system of controlling the wealth in the face of the people that they don't even know that they're losing it. All of this stuff, it's admiralty jurisdictionally enforced. Using the law of the high seas and the Uniform Commercial Code as the application of the admiralty jurisdiction, and all of the laws fall up under the Uniform Commercial Code as codified enforcement regulations of the corporation. And it has nothing to do with the government of the law, land, the air, and the water, which is a great law which governs the people. So they use in the law of salvage. In the law of salvage, and they've been tagging our toes while we live in the form of birth certificates, and when we die in the form of death certificates, because we eternal beings and we always return. So they've been using those things to tag us, mark us as dead, and then cash the money in on our accounts. Well, they can't own it. So they put it in a trust for us. Once they put it in the trust, as the trust user or holder, the trustee, the person that's holding the trust, then they can use it. But they can't own it. Everything that they purchase got to be in the name of the trust. Go look up the Rockefeller Foundation. Right? Go look up the Carnegie Foundation. These foundations is to run the money through the trust so they can never say that they can't never be accused of stealing from us. They was just using what was rightfully ours because we didn't know it was ours without our permission, because we didn't know that they needed our permission, and they used fraud to artificially secure our permission, becoming the trustees. That was all done under papal bull decrees. These papal bull decrees is what the discovery doctrine brings down all of those colonial regulations of the high seas to issue the white man's burden to civilize and turn into Christian the rest of the world. Once we get past that, then you have to look at land divisions. So when we're talking about reclaiming the land, we have to know that the CIA uses the media to put something right in your face, but it say one thing, but they only need a certain piece of information to know what it really means, right? So when these codes come up, then they see them, but they don't tell you what they're looking at, and they know what it means, right? All of the so-called secret agents, but their training simulation is the study of the 5% nation's supreme mathematics and supreme alphabet, the study of the Nation of Islam's supreme alphabet. This is telling you how to read their codes, how to focus on what they're saying, because they saying one thing but they mean something else when they talking to us. It's called double speak, or it's called political jargon, When you go back to when they used to debate, rhetoric is what it was originally called. And then it went from being rhetoric to political jargon. All of these stuff is the bullshit that they made up to confuse us as to who we was so that they can subjugate